Okay, by my clock, it is top of the hour, so we're going to get started. And anybody who joins us late, I'm sure, is going to be able to keep up. So, with nothing further said, let's get on with the show, so to speak. How to grow your cool sculpting practice exponentially using Facebook ad campaigns. Keyword there, campaigns, not just Facebook ads, but the entire campaign behind them to fill your empty appointments with a predictable flow of new patients. Another keyword there, predictable. That is the key to what it is we are offering here. And let's just make sure everybody is in the right place and they are where they expect to be. You're in the right place if you are a cool sculpting provider. It's your practice, it's your money, and you've invested heavily in this procedure, so you really do need to find a way to get patients in without spending a fortune on advertising. You're in the right place if you are a practice manager dash marketing director, and you know what that means. That means you wear lots of hats, and you don't have the time to learn every newfangled marketing fad. Well, don't worry, we know the fads from the game changers and we'll help you with that. You're in the right place if you're pretty sure that the traditional advertising that you've been spending your money on all these years is no longer working the way it used to. And in particular, you hate the fact that you can't track it. And you're looking to streamline and systematize your patient acquisition process. And you heard on the grapevine that Facebook ads is the way to go. But you've tried Facebook ads before, it didn't work for you that well, and frankly, you find the whole thing just a little bit overwhelming. So if those describe you, or if any one of those describes you, then you're in the right place. Think a little bit about what your practice might look like if you could accurately predict how many cool sculpting patients were going to come through the door in the next month, in the month after that, and the month after that, and going forward. Your cash flow was completely under control with predictable income from a steady flow of cash paying patients. And cash paying is the key there, because a lot of people get involved with something like cool sculpting as a way to boost their cash flow while they wait for the insurance companies and Medicare and all those others to pay. And we all know they take their own sweet time about paying. So the ability to have cash paying patients is great, but of course you've got to get them through the door, and that means marketing. What would your practice look like if you could confidently hire additional providers and or purchase equipment, knowing for a fact that they'd hit the ground running and very quickly be bringing in additional profits to your practice? And what would your practice look like if every marketing dollar you spent could be tracked and you could bring in patients virtually at will with campaigns that you can turn on and off like a faucet? And we call that the faucet effect, and it really is a very powerful concept once you get the hang of it. So here's what we're going to go over. How a well-executed campaign on Facebook can drive patient volume and pretty much bring patients to your practice at will. It's got to be a well-executed campaign, but that's what we aim for with all of our campaigns that we run. We'll talk about the key components of a campaign, and if you don't have these in place, all your results are going to be frustrating. And the ad itself, we always tell our clients, the ad itself represents maybe 10% of what we do, so we'll talk about the other 90% here. The 4 shifts in thinking that you need to make when it comes to Facebook advertising. Make these changes in the way you think about Facebook, and a lot is going to change. And then the one metric that you have to track that will change the way you look at marketing your practice forever. So, and there's one thing that makes this webinar just a little bit different from many that you might have been on. I don't have anything to sell. There's no buy button at the end of this thing. We're just going to give you some helpful content right now that is going to revolutionize the way you market your practice. That's a promise. And you may ask, well, what's the catch? Why would you do that? Well, I do that because I believe that who best educates the market will quickly come to own the market. That's a phrase that comes from the content marketing world, which is where I've spent the last couple of decades of my career. And in fact, what we'll do is we'll send you this. This is a map. We call this an attraction funnel. And I'll go through this throughout the presentation, and I'll send you this if you stay to the end. And we do have software that tracks who stays and who leaves early, so no cheating. But if you stay to the end, I'll send this on to you as a PDF. So hopefully that's something you'll find useful. So let's describe you, at least as best as I can make out. Does this describe you? Your practice needs more cash paying patients, but you only have a vague idea of how to go about getting them. And yes, you got the memo about Facebook. You know that Facebook advertising is becoming a pretty big deal around these parts, but you really don't know where to start. You can't keep spending money on the traditional advertising anymore. Everyone's telling you that those things don't work as well as they used to. And you know that marketing comes with the territory. After all, this is a business and you own that business. So you get that, but you don't want to come across looking like this guy. This is, of course, Dr. Oz. I'm being perhaps a little bit hard on him, but lemons as deodorant might explain why a lot of people in the medical profession don't take this guy as seriously as he would perhaps wish they did. So there is good news, because this isn't your fault. You went to school to learn how to care for people, and no one ever taught you how to do sales and marketing. That was not on the med school curriculum that you went to study. And maybe you don't even use Facebook. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. A lot of the physicians I talk to don't use Facebook themselves. Their kids do, but they don't. So how can you be expected to really understand how to advertise on it? And of course, the landscape is always changing. Media has changed so much in the last couple of decades, and it's changing every day. It seems that Facebook changes every other week, and we have a tough time keeping up with it, and we do this all day. So how can anyone expect you to know all the intricate details of tracking pixels, marketing funnels, and click-through rates? Your profession is already complicated enough without you having to delve into the complexities of the marketing profession. So, and there is more good news, because really all you have to do is make a few simple shifts in the way you think about this stuff, and everything will come into focus quite rapidly. And in fact, your whole perspective on marketing will change with these few simple shifts in mindset. And here's what I think your practice could look like. You won't ever have to go out and get patients again. They'll come to you because we'll set up the funnels that attract them to you, if indeed that's something that you would like us to do. Patients will automatically think of you first whenever they're ready to schedule a CoolSculpting consultation. So you'll be top of mind. We call that top of mind awareness in the marketing world. You'll have a full CoolSculpting appointments calendar, and that will provide a steady flow of predictable and reliable cash flow. And every marketing dollar you spend will be completely trackable and profitable, most importantly, because you can turn these campaigns on and off with the click of a mouse. And if it's not a profitable campaign, turn it off. Test something new, get a profitable one going. Because that will lead to predictable income, and this will allow you to make real plans for growth of your practice. And the truth is, it's not as hard as you might think when you know what you're doing. You don't need to spend thousands of dollars on ads, because the ads on Facebook are relatively inexpensive, and the ads don't need to be seen by people who aren't interested in your product. This is something that's just been a holdover from the days of mass marketing, mass media, print, television, radio. Even with the best will in the world, you can't help the fact that those ads, those impressions, tens of thousands of those impressions are going to go to people who have no interest in what you're doing. You can't control it the way you can these days on Facebook. You don't need to learn all the ins and outs of Facebook targeting and audience creation and stuff like that. You don't need to hire an expensive agency. In fact, what we found is that traditional agencies often don't get this stuff. They still live in the old world of branding and image, and they don't really get how the world has changed. And many of them have. There are definitely some good digital agencies out there, but the traditional agencies that focus on creating beautiful ads for you for inclusion in the back cover of the local magazine, they are not necessarily a good fit for what I'm talking about here. And you just need 4 simple shifts. We talked about that a moment ago, and I'll go over those in a minute. But before I do that, you might want to know a little bit about who this guy is. Who is this British guy telling you how to do Facebook ads? Well, that's me, Michael Jones. That's a photograph taken on Cape Cod, Massachusetts, which is where I live. Don't let this English accent fool you. I'm just outside Boston, and you can tell from my wicked broad Boston accent, I'm sure. And I'll tell you a little bit about me. I've had a long and varied career, so I won't go over all of it, but there are 4 pit stops that are worth mentioning along the way that have kind of led me to this place. The first is that I started working in the magazine industry. And I started at Cosmopolitan in London 4th floor, right above Carnaby Street in the West End of London. Very cool place to work. And it kind of got me interested in the aesthetic industry and the glamorous side of the publishing industry. I moved to this country, did a lot of things, but one of them was local newspapers and helping local advertisers, just like you, just like the physician practices in the local community, put ad campaigns together, other businesses too, not just medical, and drive local business. And that's certainly something that is very relevant to what I'm doing today. I've spent 10 years working in the internet marketing space. I have a side business that's separate from the media business that I have built my career in, and that is something that relies very much on the internet to drive its sales. I know a lot about search engine optimization and online advertising, social media advertising, email marketing, all those good things. And then most recently, for the last 15 years, 16 years now, I've been the publisher of MD News. So I'm very familiar with healthcare and healthcare marketing. MD News is a business and lifestyle magazine for physicians. I published the Boston edition, but there are editions all across the country. And we sell on a national and a local scale content marketing pieces and advertising for physicians and the healthcare industry. So even though MD News is first and foremost a magazine, we have evolved into MD News Digital, MD News Video, and MD News Social. And this is the auspices under which we do this program. This is a consulting service for medical practices and other healthcare providers, helping them to get the most out of Facebook advertising campaigns. So that's MD News Social, and it's all branded under the MD News banner that we've been working on for the last 16 years. So there is an old way of looking at advertising, and it's worth taking a very quick look at it by way of comparison to the new way, which I believe is the correct way. Traditional advertising, print, newspapers, magazines, which is my background, yellow pages, not sure anyone does that anymore, radio, television, maybe billboards if you've got a big budget, you're a hospital or something like that. But this is the traditional advertising. And the limitation with traditional advertising is it has very, very broad reach, but very limited targeting options. So the tendency was always to create generic ads to attract all kinds of patients. So you may have the plastic surgeon, for example, who says, come to Dr. So-and-so for all your cosmetic surgery needs. And that's all well and good, but it doesn't really serve specific ads to specific audiences. Also, because this advertising was very expensive, the tendency was always to focus on branding and making the advertiser look good, rather than what is ideal, which is to give the patient the information they need to move along their buyer's journey. And we'll talk a little bit about the buyer's journey, but essentially there is this process that a buyer goes through on any product they purchase, the sort of the phases of the journey. And if you get the right message to them at the right phase of that journey, that's when your marketing really starts to hit home. And then there's this old joke, which you've probably heard. John Wanamaker, who was a retail magnate back in the day, who used to say that half the money he spent on advertising worked great, the other half was just a complete waste. The trouble was he had no way of telling which half was which. So those things have changed, and there is now a new way of looking at marketing. Targeting can now be so precise that you can market specific services to specific audiences. So CoolSculpting, Botox, liposuction, Kybella, whatever it is you do in your practice, you can market all of those to different specific audiences. And because the cost per click are very low in Facebook, you can set up dozens of campaigns and test them all against one another and just run with the winners. And this is how you get profitable campaigns, and you cut out the losers. If it's not profitable, turn it off if it's not working for you. So very much a new way of thinking about advertising. You can now use online video. We'll talk a little bit about online video. It's a big deal in Facebook in particular. Facebook and YouTube are somewhat in a turf war these days about capturing as many eyeballs as possible. And online video can engage and educate your patients and get them earlier in that buyer's journey, so that when they are ready to make a purchase, they know all about the product or the service, and you are very much the person that taught them that, and therefore you are more likely to be the person they go to when they actually are making the decision to buy. And in the new way that every single marketing dollar can be tracked and measured and tested, so that John Wanamaker quote becomes moot. It literally can become a profit center for your practice. Every single dollar could potentially become a profit center rather than an expense. So we talked about those 4 shifts in thinking, and I'll list them right here, and we'll go through them in a little more detail. One at a time. A Facebook ad campaign has little to do with your Facebook page. I get this quite a lot, where we talk about Facebook with a physician practice and they say, oh no, don't worry, we're all set. And what they really mean is they've got an intern posting to their Facebook page every other day. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about something very, very different. Laser targeting and retargeting are the keys to success. That's a second shift in thinking. The most important metric you will ever measure is your EPL. We'll talk about that and tell you what that is all about. And it's not the ad, it's the funnel behind the ad. Okay, so these are the 4 shifts in thinking. I'm going to go through one at a time here. First one, the ad strategy and the Facebook page are 2 different things. Okay, so don't get them confused. There's very much a different way of looking at Facebook advertising, which is different from the way you've traditionally looked over the last several years at least at your Facebook page. And while you do need a Facebook page to have an ad account, it won't do much to bring you in patients. No matter how often you're updating it, no matter how engaging the content is, it's not going to help you drive patient volume because Facebook is a pay-to-play platform. And it has been now for several years. If you remember the movie The Social Network, they talked about this. The Justin Timberlake character said, oh, let's just get 1 billion users and then we'll be all set. Well, that's pretty much what they did. They don't charge users to use it, but they charge advertisers. But they always had that plan that they would basically make it free until they got the user base up to a certain level, and then they would start making their money later. And the only way these days to drive patient volume using Facebook is with paid traffic. And you better know how to do it or hire someone who does. So why does this matter? Well, roughly 2% of the people who have liked your page are going to see the content you post. So imagine that, how much time you spend getting up those likes. So maybe you got 1,000, maybe you got a few hundred, maybe you got several thousand, who knows. But you spend a lot of time trying to get those likes, and only 2% of them now are seeing your posts. So bear that in mind as you think about how much time you put into this. Increased likes and post engagements cannot be taken to the bank. The only 2 things that I'm concerned about when I'm running a campaign is, does it add patients? And does it, if they don't add patients, does it at least add them to your email list so that you can turn them into patients later on? Those are the only 2 things, the only 2 metrics that we care about that much. There is some value in having increased likes, and we can talk about that as we get into some more sophisticated campaign management. But by and large, likes and post engagement do not add a whole lot to your bottom line. So we focus on those other 2, patients and subscribers. Here's an interesting one. The kinds of people who are good at maintaining a Facebook page often don't have the skills necessary to be good at running campaigns. This is one of those left brain, right brain things where it's kind of an artsy, creative type of endeavor to maintain a Facebook page, coming up with nice images and engaging content. And the real success of a Facebook ads campaign, yes, there's an ad in there and it is a creative endeavor for that part of it, but we talked about that just being 10%, right? The real nuts and bolts of it is all analytics. It's looking at stats and comparing numbers and percentage and click-through rates and those kinds of things. So very often, not only are they very different skill sets, they're very different personality types. So be aware of that as we sort of go through this. It's quite easy to run Facebook ads. Facebook itself is getting quite good at training people. They've got some training programs in there. It's very difficult to do it well, and this is something we're always trying to discuss with prospective clients. It looks easier than it really is, and particularly in healthcare, and particularly in the area of aesthetic healthcare. Facebook is very picky about the kinds of ads it has on its feed, and it does not like to put anything up there that could be conceived as pain and suffering. Healthcare, of course, a lot of healthcare is about curing diseases and injuries, so there's a lot of pain and suffering there. They're very, very picky about things that might be conceived as being about body shaming, even if it's inadvertent. They don't like before and after pictures. They don't like images that might make their users feel inadequate. So the kinds of images you often see on a cosmetic surgeon's website or an aesthetic practice's website really are a no-no for Facebook. So you've got to know that stuff, because if you put ads together and they keep getting rejected, best case scenario, you can get yourself into one of these endless loops of rejection where even when you make changes and put the most benign ad up there, it still gets rejected because it's not a person at the other end, it's an algorithm, and you kind of get stuck in this algorithmic loop of no matter what you do, they keep rejecting it. Worst case scenario, if you keep submitting ads that violate the terms of service, you can find yourself getting banned and having your ad disabled. Big deal. You don't want to do that. So we know what we're doing, and we encourage people, if they want to run their own campaigns, to make sure they know what they're doing too. But once you make this shift, you're going to see Facebook ads as being just like any other marketing that you have to spend money on, except that it's 10 times more effective. So bear that in mind, because I'm a huge fan, as you might imagine, but it does cost money. You'll be able to control how many people see your message, and that's important. And most important of all, control who those people are. And you'll be able to track your ad spend against the patient acquisition goal. Now, how many people have a patient acquisition goal, right? You don't tend to think those ways with traditional advertising. You're not going to say, well, I'll run a newspaper and I'll get 50 new patients and that'll meet my goal for the month, because it's just not predictable enough to be able to make those kinds of statements. But you can with Facebook advertising. And most important of all, you can learn a key metric for any business. What does it actually cost to acquire a patient? Huge metric to be able to know that. And that's something that we can hopefully help you do. And you're going to have so much control over your marketing and your cash flow that you'll be able to turn it on and off like a faucet. Shift in thinking number 2. Laser target your ads to specific audiences. So we always encourage our clients to hyper specialize. And that is the key to successful marketing. So even if you offer multiple services, we encourage you to market each one separately. So we get away from that printout that we were talking about earlier, where Dr. So-and-so for all of your cosmetic surgery needs. We don't go there. We instead say, hey, come see us because we do CoolSculpting better than anybody. Or come see us because we do Kybella better than anybody. Make sure you have a pixel. This is a big one. We've all been there, and you're looking online for maybe an airline ticket or some other purchase that you're looking to make, and then you leave that website and you go to another website that's got nothing to do with that, nothing to do with airlines, nothing to do with travel even, and yet that ad suddenly pops up on that website. That's all done with pixels, and Facebook is big on pixels. They've got a very, very good system for tracking audiences and then using those tracking pixels to target future retargeting ads. So it's a very, very effective way, and I'll show you in a moment how we do pixels and what we use them for. But it's a really neat little trick. This is something we used to do back in the day when we used to have to chase down clients more than we do now. We used to check people's pixel, and there's a little Chrome extension that you can get onto your Chrome browser. It's called Facebook Pixel Help, and it just tells you if you've got your pixel set up properly on either your website or any landing pages that you build. But it also tells you whether a pixel is set up on somebody else's website. So it's a really neat thing. When we used to have to track down prospects, we used to go onto their website and see if they had a pixel on there. And if they didn't have a pixel, it tells us one of 3 things. If they're not doing Facebook advertising, it will tell us they're not doing Facebook advertising, because if they were, they would have a pixel on their website. Or if they're doing Facebook advertising, but they're not doing it correctly. And in that case, we would call them and start a conversation about Facebook advertising and how we might be able to help them. Or third option is they're paying someone to do a Facebook ad campaign for them, but that person clearly doesn't know what they're doing, because if they did, there would be a pixel on the website. So it's a really good way for us. We used to use this as a way to prospect. So something to toy with. Definitely, if you have a chance to download that extension on your Chrome browser, check your own website and make sure there's a pixel on it, or check some of your competitors and see what they're doing in the Facebook space. You might find that quite interesting. So, cool tip there. Make sure that each ad focuses on one thing so that you can present yourself as the leading authority. So it's all about positioning here. Don't just say, hey, we can do anything. Even if you can, each message should present you as a leading authority in one thing and one thing only. Why does this matter? You don't want your marketing to become diluted. You want each individual person at the other end of that message to easily see what's in it for them. And that's all to do with your copy and your choice of images, but definitely making sure that it's specific to their needs and their desires. The majority of people who visit your site are not going to book a consultation right away. So it's really important to use that first visit as an opportunity to establish a long-term relationship. And that's what we were talking about with those pixels. And you don't want a competitor who is perceived as being more of a specialist to get your patient. So again, if you're going out there with this rather mushy, generic message of come to us for all your aesthetic needs, and someone else comes in and says, hey, we're the best CoolSculpting practice in town, well, guess who's going to get the client? But once you do that, all your marketing will become laser focused and much more effective. And the prospects are going to see you talking directly to them in all of your advertising. And the pixels, we talked about this, allowing you to build these ongoing relationships long after they've left your site or your landing page. and the patients will seek you out because you are seeing as the leader and not the other guy. And then here's that key metric I was telling you about. If you take nothing else from this webinar and you decide you don't want to work with us, which is perfectly fine, this is not a sales pitch, and if you do nothing else marketing-wise throughout all of 2017, make sure you grasp this because it really will change the way you market your practice forever. So the EPL stands for earnings per lead, and I call this the holy grail of online marketing. Why it matters is because of this. Facebook, the most powerful advertising medium ever devised. If you don't believe that, then you're on the wrong webinar. The reason it is because it can literally change the definition of advertising. For 100 years, advertising has been all about shouting from the rooftops to the widest and largest possible audience. But Facebook turns that on its head, and it's all about reducing your audience size. Because you can't advertise to 1.6 billion people. You have to reduce the audience size and laser target your message to very specific audiences. So that's why that shift in thinking is really important. The number one reason for its effectiveness is the ability to test, measure, and tweak every step of the way, and ultimately allow you to measure the EPL, subtract from that the cost per lead, the CPL, and that can teach you just how profitable your marketing is. And there's no other marketing strategy that allows you to do that. So once you can do that, you'll be able to track every dollar and see precisely how profitable it is. How cool is that, right? You'll be able to turn campaigns on and off like a faucet. You'll be able to implement a steady growth plan for your practice because you'll know how your marketing is going to affect that cash flow and know if you build it, they will come. We talked about whether you wanted to expand or add new equipment, hire new staff. You'll know based on very, very clear metrics that you can build the patient volume to justify those kinds of growth strategies. And the very concept of having a marketing budget will become moot. And I know this from people I work with in the internet marketing space. They would run a campaign or they'd run a promotion, and then at the end of it they'd say, rats, I wish I'd spent more money. I wish I'd spent more. And that's because they know that a certain amount of return is coming back. Nobody who does traditional advertising wishes they could spend more. They tend to think of advertising as an expense and something that a necessary evil, if you will. But people who do Facebook advertising and do it well are constantly wishing they could spend more because they know that every dollar is bringing 3 back, 4 back in return. So that's really the way they think and could be the way you think. And I love this quote, marketing that you don't even have to pay for because your future patients will pick up the tab. And this is from a guy called Taylor Welsh, who's a mentor of mine in the online marketing space. And if you could think in those terms, that really is a powerful new perspective on how to market your practice. So how do you do this? How do you measure your earnings per lead? Well, you do it by building a funnel. And I'm going to do that for you in a moment. Let me just take a quick sip of water because I'm getting a little hoarse here. Hold on. Okay, shifted thinking number 4 is not the ad, it's the funnel behind the ad. And we talked about this representing about 10% of what we do. The most important thing is the funnel, which ultimately turns a small percentage of the visitors into patients. And every stage of the funnel now can be tested and tweaked and optimized to improve results. And that is where the magic happens. Why this matters is because too many Facebook advertisers focus exclusively on the ad, and then they wonder why their ads don't work. And the funnel's job is to weed out those people who are not your ideal patients. They're tire kickers, they're looky-loos, they're freebie seekers, and they frankly are a bit of a pain. They soak up your resources, they tie up your staff, and your job, or the funnel's job, is to get those guys out and get ideal patients into your practice. People are actually going to spend money and get these procedures done. A good funnel also includes a nurture sequence, and that allows you to keep reaping the benefits of your campaign even when it's long over. Tracking and optimizing every stage of your funnel right through to the end, and this is important, through the end of the nurture sequence will give you key metrics that will help you truly understand your practice. And once you make the shift, your marketing will be less about the woo-woo stuff like images and branding, all that stuff you can't measure, and it will be more about analytics and data and things that you can measure, which of course is great for doctors because they all come from a sort of scientific background, most do anyway, so that's good for them. And you'll be able to accurately predict how many patients are likely to come out of a given campaign just by the number of people you put in. Once you have a working funnel for your CoolSculpting service, you'll be able to get more going for your other services too. it's not a case of just doing a cookie cutter. It's not a complete duplicate. You do have to tweak them differently for different service lines. But a lot of that heavy lifting has already been done with the CoolSculpting funnel that you build first, and you can then take that on and use it to drive your Kybella business or any of the other services you offer. And it only takes one well-optimized working funnel to completely transform your practice. I know this from my own business. Once I got my funnel working, and it took a while, it took a few attempts, and I had to tweak it, but once I got it going, it changed everything. And that's part of what you're witnessing right now is how that funnel works to help me drive my business and my clients' acquisition process. So this is what the funnel is actually going to look like. I'm going to take you through it. We'll throw some numbers at it and give you a sense of how I think and how my staff thinks when we are putting together these funnels. This is a 5-phase funnel. We start with a paid ad, a landing page, an offer, a call to action, and a nurture campaign. Now, if you don't know what any of these terms mean, don't worry. We'll go through it as we take you through this funnel, and all will be explained. But the reason we call it a funnel is because it looks like this. You have a large number of people going in one end. The job of the funnel is to whittle those numbers down at every stage, and then once you get to the end, it's a relatively small number, but those people are your ideal patients. They're people who are actually going to spend money with you. Hopefully, at least a certain percentage of them will. So let's look at this and throw some flesh and bones on it. Start off with an ad. An ad can either be a video, or I put a little image together there. You can see the CoolSculpting image there of the attractive woman walking by a shop window, which is imagery that Zeltique has been using for years in their campaigns. You take the clicks from either your video or your image to a landing page. Now, a landing page is just a web page set up that asks the client to do one thing and one thing only. And that is to give us their name, their email address, and preferably their phone number. We do not encourage you to send clicks directly to your website. So many people get this wrong, including some fairly high-profile people in the healthcare space. They send clicks to a blog post or to their website in the expectation that people are going to, I don't know, click around and find out a little bit about the doctor's CV or what have you, but that's not what you want them to do. It may seem like that's a good thing for you to have them do, but it's not. They have now been lost. You've lost track of them. They've gone wandering off, and they didn't give you the one thing you needed, which was their contact information. So there are sometimes circumstances when you'll send them straight to a blog post or straight to a video if you're trying to build audiences for future retargeting and things like that. But 9 times out of 10, when we're putting a campaign together, we send them to a landing page. The landing page has no navigation on it except the one click, send me my gift certificate, or their call to action. So what are we asking them to do? Most times for a CoolSculpting campaign, we're giving them some kind of a gift certificate or an invitation, but we're giving them some kind of special offer. Now, if they go on to that special offer or they go onto that landing page and do not download the special offer, we can retarget them. We can send the same ad to them again, or we can send a different ad saying, hey, I noticed you were interested in that gift certificate, but you didn't download it. Have another go here. So there's ways you can do that and make it a little bit more sophisticated. But let's assume for the time being at least that they did download the offer, and the offer gives them a chance to book an appointment. So they can book an appointment now, and this is where too many advertisers sort of lose the plot. They think that it's over now. They think that the whole sequence has run its course, and those patients who do not book an appointment are lost. But that is not the case, because we have their name and their address and sometimes their phone number. So we can put together a nurture campaign after the fact. It could be emails, it could be a phone call, it could be a combination thereof. It could last for a few days, it could last for a few months, it could last for years until they hit unsubscribe. Depends on the content you're sending them, but if they find it valuable, they may stay on your list for years to come. And you may also have 2 different sequences, one for the people who did download the offer and the one for the people who didn't, and there may be different messages depending on the action that they took. So we've got the nurture sequence, and every step of the way, every time they get one of those nurture sequence incidents, if you will, they have an opportunity to come back and schedule an appointment. So besides the ones who schedule right away, these people involved in the nurture sequence can come back and schedule appointments after the fact. So that's how the funnel looks. Now let's throw some numbers at this. Let's assume 1,000 people click your ad. And of those 1,000 people, 200 download the lead magnet or the offer. That's 20%, which is reasonable, or in fact it's a little conservative. And I'm going to assume $15 per lead. That's based on my own experience of what typically a CoolSculpting lead costs, somewhere between $10 and $15. There may be additional cost because you're paying someone to put the campaign together, or you're paying someone on your staff. There's additional things to factor in, but you can pretty easily and accurately predict what that cost is. Of those people, 25 people schedule a consultation, and of those 25, 6 become patients. So that's 3%. 3% of the 200 who originally downloaded your magnet. And then the nurture sequence kicks in. And what we can hope for and maybe expect, and we'll know as we test, that an additional 4 people schedule an appointment after the fact based on these additional communications that they get through the nurture campaign. So now you've got 10 people who have come and become patients as a result of this campaign. So now is a good time for us to look at a very key metric, which we call the patient lifetime value. And we'll talk to you a little bit about this if we work with you. We'll talk to our clients about how many times does this patient likely come to complete their treatment? How much does the treatment cost? How many of them are likely to come back at some future date in order to have additional treatments, maybe to a different part of their body, or even a completely different treatment. Maybe it's not CoolSculpting, maybe it's something else. How many people are likely to refer a friend? And let's put a dollar value to that referral. How many people are buying product while they're at your location and actually having their treatment? They leave, they come out through a nice reception area, and there's product for sale, and how many of them buy it? These are things you should be tracking. And if you're not, you need to set up processes and systems to do that, because what you really need to acquire is an approximate lifetime patient value. And we've come up with $1,500. It may be different for you. It may be much more for you, maybe much less, who knows. But that's something that is really worth tracking, because the cost of acquiring a patient is one thing, but the value that that patient brings is something you also need to know. So here's your EPL. You've got 10 patients, 6 first time around, 4 coming later, that's 10. You've got a lifetime patient value of $1,500, that's 15,000. And you had 200 leads, remember? So there's 15,000 divided by 200 is $75 per lead. That's what your leads are worth to you. And we also know what they cost. They cost $1,500, $15 I should say, plus a little bit more, as I say, if you're paying someone to actually set up the campaigns for you. So you know what your leads cost, you know what your leads are worth, and there is your earnings per lead. Very, very important metric. If you know that number, you can now really start to focus on, okay, how do I A, increase that number, and B, how do I get as many patients through the door, knowing that each one is going to be a profit center in their own right. So this is a different kind of funnel. I'll go through this very quickly. It's the same sort of concept, but this is for events. So a lot of CoolSculpting providers have events, open houses and things like that. So concept is basically the same. Add to landing page. This time they download an invitation, and this time there is a small call to action sequence inside the funnel. So it's between the invitation and the event. And what we're trying to do here is A, make sure they got their invitation, B, make sure they're actually coming, and C, see if we can't pre-qualify these people, get some sense of how familiar they are with the procedure, ask if they have any questions about it, see if they've ever had a procedure like this before, and basically what you're trying to do is pre-qualify people, because you do not want 40 people who are just here to get a freebie and get some refreshments, come and eat your food. So you don't want those people. So do that part first, and that someone in your office needs to do that, and we need to train them to do that so they feel comfortable making that call. And then you've got the same concept of 6 people scheduling an appointment, 4 more coming along later, and still the same lifetime value of $1,500. So that's a different kind of funnel for a different kind of promotion that you might be running. So here's what I said we were going to go over, and I just want to make sure we've covered everything here. We talked about how a well-executed Facebook campaign can drive patient volume pretty much at will. We talked about the key components of a campaign, without which your results are always going to be frustrating. And we talked about the fact that it's really only 10% ad, and the rest is all about the funnel. The one metric that you have to track that will change the way you look at marketing forever, there's your EPL that we just went over, and the 4 shifts you need to make in the way you think about Facebook advertising. And those 4 shifts are: a Facebook ad campaign is not your Facebook page. You need to think differently about it. It's not free, but it is very effective. Laser targeting and retargeting are the keys to success. Remember that pixel we talked about. The EPL, which is that most important metric you'll ever have. And it's not the ad, it's the funnel behind the ad. So bear all that stuff in mind, and we did cover all of that, so that's good. So I'm going to conclude by sort of asking why you came here today. I don't know why you came. Maybe it's because you're struggling to bring in patients and you've made a big investment in the procedure and you're not getting enough patients in. Maybe you're tired of wasting dollars on the old ads, the traditional advertising that don't work as well as they used to. Maybe you're planning to add capacity and you just want to make sure there's patients covering that. Maybe you just need some help figuring out Facebook because it can be overwhelming if you don't know really how to set these funnels up. But either way, you now have a choice to make because there's two ways we can go from here. You can go the do-it-yourself way. Implement your own campaigns. Hopefully you've learned something on this presentation to help you do that. And you can just go in there, go over what we've gone over today and implement these campaigns yourself. And you'll be surprised. I know a number of doctors who actually do this, which kind of leaves me scratching my head. I think, goodness gracious, you went all the way through medical school and here you are running Facebook campaigns. A surprisingly large number of people that I talk to actually do that. Don't do it terribly well, I might add, but that's just my opinion. Or you can have someone on your staff do it. I mean, you can certainly send them the link to this webinar. If there's a replay, we'll try and send a replay out. And you can have them learn from this and implement some stuff for you. The trouble with that is you kind of have to cross your fingers and hope it gets done right. And if it's not done right, it's going to cost you money. And I don't think Facebook advertising is that expensive on a per-click basis. But if you get 2 or 3 campaigns running and they're not running properly and they're sending you traffic all over the place and you don't have a funnel set up and you don't really know what it is you're paying, it can add up and you can find yourself wasting a lot of money. So option 2 is that you can set up a strategy session with us. Now the cost for this strategy session is free. We did talk about there not being any kind of button. And I stand by that. It is free. There's no obligation. There's no heavy-handed sales pitch. All we're going to do is just, you tell us all about your practice and we'll discuss whether we might be able to help you. We can help you even if you end up deciding you don't want to work with us. Just what you get out of the call itself will be useful. There are some caveats because we can't work with everybody. And at this stage in my life, frankly, there are certain people I don't want to work with, certain types of people. We do offer geographic exclusivity. When you're targeting, one of the criteria you can target by is by zip code. So we do not want to have people who are too close to one another basically competing with each other for the same zip codes. So if you're on the North Shore of Boston, and I do have clients up there, clients up there, then I'm not going to take on another client right in that vicinity. Similarly, I live on Cape Cod, and if we have someone on the Cape, then that'll be the only person we have on the Cape. We are able to work with anybody all over the country. We're not restricted at all by the geography of being close to Boston. We happen to be close to Boston, but as long as we can manage the time zones, we can set a campaign up for someone in San Diego or Seattle. You do have to be committed to reinventing your marketing, and you have to be willing to look at every stage of the funnel, and you have to be willing to either do or have your staff do the things that need to be done at the various stages of that funnel. And if I have to spend all my time convincing you to do this, to make those phone calls or what have you, then that's not going to be a good fit. But even if we decide that it's not a great fit, I can pretty much guarantee that this is going to be worth your while because we will teach you some more things over and above what we've gone over today to help you. What we'll basically do is we'll get a clear understanding of your practice. We'll get a sense of who you are reaching out to. We call that the patient avatar. And how you've been going about it, whether it's be through online marketing or through Facebook or through traditional marketing like print, TV and radio. And we'll discuss what kind of inventory you have, because if we're going to make something work, or if you're going to make something work, you do need to have some inventory in place. You need to have photographs, you need to have videos. An email list is good because you can use that, you can upload it into Facebook and use it as a lookalike audience creator, and there's a number of different things you can do. So I'd be very interested in sort of discussing with you what you have in place, and we will help you put together an EPL map similar to the one I just showed you, and that alone would make the meeting worthwhile. So why would we do that? What's the catch, I hear you saying, okay? And we do this because of the 3 ifs. If you decide that you would like us to help you, and if we decide that this is a good fit, and if there are no conflicts of interest with any of our existing clients, then we might invite you to become a client. We don't take on all that many clients. We're not going to be the kind of group that handles 150 different clients at the same time. It's a relatively exclusive club simply because we're a relatively small, believe in the personal service kind of aspect. So it's not going to be for everybody, and we're not going to be able to take on everybody, even if it is a good fit. But that said, we are taking on clients right now, and we'd love to take on one or two more. So here's what I want you to do. If this is something that interests you, go to mdnewssocial.com. And there are two S's in there, one at the end of news and one at the beginning of social. So MD News Social with two S's. And basically what it is a calendar page. And you can book a time. And it's set up so that you can book a time in the evening if you wish. Because I know a lot of doctors are busy doing patients and procedures during the day. Now, bear in mind, I'm on the East Coast. So if you're in California, you're not going to be able to book up a time for, 10 o'clock at night, which is 1 a.m. my time. But we will take appointments into the evening, and sometimes even on a weekend if that's the only way you can meet with us. But also during regular business hours as well, if that works. Schedule a date and time, either with me or with someone on my team, and we'll set something up. And once you book the time, we're going to direct you to a quick questionnaire, just so that you can give us some basic information so that we can be prepared for the session. So we don't want to have a situation where we get on the phone call and all of a sudden I'm spending the first 15 minutes asking basic questions like, do you have an email list? So we'll ask those in a questionnaire which we ask you to fill out and submit prior to the call, and that's it. We really hope that we have a chance to chat with you. If that chat goes well and we all decide, it's got to be a joint decision. This is not going to be, as I say, a heavy-handed sales pitch type situation. It's got to be something we all want to do. But if we decide that we're going to work together, then I hope we have the chance to do that. And if we decide not to, I sincerely hope that you found this presentation at least to be useful and beneficial. And I really do thank you for joining us. Thanks a lot, and I hope to speak to you soon. Bye-bye.